Hello friends, welcome to Game It Up. My name is Dave and this is a review of Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. Can you believe that as this video goes up, this game is 10 years old? Seriously, 10 years is how long it was between me first playing Mario 64 and the release of Mario Galaxy. And those two games feel like a lifetime apart for me. But Tropical Freeze doesn't feel that old. Initially it released on the Wii U and later was ported to the Switch, which is the version I am looking at today. Before we begin, I just want to say thank you very much for checking this video out. If you're not subscribed already, please consider clicking that subscribe button down below if you want to keep up with future videos. So now, let me give you a very brief history lesson on my feelings of this franchise. Donkey Kong Country was a phenomenal platformer back on the Super Nintendo and a complete reinvention of Nintendo's iconic ape. It spawned sequels that didn't feature Donkey Kong in a playable capacity strangely, but those were pretty good too. I didn't have a SNES growing up, so I never experienced these until I was an adult on the Wii Virtual Console. Donkey Kong Country 2 was my favourite of that trilogy. I seem to be one of the 3 people in the world who absolutely loves Donkey Kong 64, even though I acknowledge it hasn't aged well. I think it could do with a remake which ditches the colour-coded bananas and lets you switch Kongs on the fly, but I still have fond memories of it. Donkey Kong was in a bit of a strange place once Rare left Nintendo, with some experimental spin-offs, most notably those games that used the bongos, Donkey Konga and Donkey Kong Jungle Beat. Donkey Konga was something I got my family to play. Even when people came over, my mum would say, "Bring down that bongo game." Seriously, in my house, this game was basically the Wii 2 years before the Wii came out. I didn't get to experience the GBA Donkey Kong games as I didn't actually own a GBA, so I didn't jump back into the Donkey Kong games until 2010. And that's when we got a true return to form, when Retro Studios parted from the successful Metroid adventures and got their mitts on Donkey Kong, and the result was Donkey Kong Country Returns on the Wii. It was an excellent game to play through all round, even though it did enforce pointless motion controls on you, and the 3DS version fixed that thankfully. So when it came to E3 2014, we got this trailer. And I'll be honest, as much as I enjoy this series, I wasn't excited. My exact thoughts were, that's nice we're getting another one, as long as this isn't the game Retro have been working on. Despite Retro proving their worth with the previous Donkey Kong Country game, I was disappointed. I think it was because there had been a rumour that Retro was making a Star Fox Metroid crossover, remember that? Even though that had been denied by that point, I still held out hope. This is why we shouldn't pay attention to rumours, I suppose. But with the upcoming releases of Mario 3D World, Mario Kart 8 and Super Smash Bros, as well as a slew of 3DS titles, my hype for this game was fairly low. But when the release date of February 13th, 2014 hit, of course I was picking it up day one, why wouldn't I? But that's the Wii U version. There's no point in me going into the details of the game yet, as the Switch version is practically identical from what I can tell, which is why I wasn't hyped for the Switch port. I am very happy to see Wii U games get ported to Switch. I mean, that console had some phenomenal games that no one played, simply because they released it on a console that no one owned. But for me, this wasn't a game I wanted to double dip on. I only typically do that if the port adds new stuff to it, like 3D World's Bowser Fury or Hyrule Warriors including the 3DS content that I didn't own previously. But the new funky mode wasn't really doing it for me. I didn't wait very long. I still wanted to play through it again, and I wanted to play through it on the Switch. I found it for about £10 cheaper on Amazon one day, so I picked it up. And that is my very interesting story of how I came to own this game. So, let's talk about it. The game starts with it being Donkey Kong's birthday, even though this didn't come out on his birthday. He has Diddy, Dixie and Cranky with him, so I'm guessing he's fallen out with Candy and Funky. But as one of his extra lives goes out of the window, we get to see the main villains of this game, the Snowmads. I love that name. They take over DK's island, where it looks like several people are celebrating, and freeze it over, blasting our Kongs to a different island. You then have to travel back across many levels, spread across different islands, to reclaim your home. So Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze is a 2D platformer, and I'll say it right now, it's one of the finest 2D platformers ever crafted. Everything about how Donkey Kong controls just feels right. You have some basic moves, run, jump and roll for movement. Pressing the attack button while stationary will hammer the ground, which can stun enemies and smash blocks, and pressing the attack button while moving will do a roll attack. You can also use the trigger buttons to pull hooks out of the grounds to reveal things, and also to grab hold of vines to swing across and to be able to crawl along the ceilings of some places. The odd blowing mechanic from the previous game is absent here, and thank goodness for that. That always felt weird for me. The main addition to the gameplay with Returns was when you got Diddy Kong. Instead of just being an extra hit point, he rides on your back, and holding the jump button while in the air lets you glide with his jetpack for some extra distance. Tropical Freeze expands on that by having 2 additional Kongs, Dixie and Cranky. Cranky is a fun novelty where he bounces on his cane, and I would normally say like Scrooge McDuck, but maybe we've reached the point where Shovel Knight would get more recognition now. This allows you to land on spiky things without harm. This is a nice novelty, but not one I use very much. Dixie though, she pretty much makes Diddy redundant. By twirling her hair she gets you some extra height, but this extra height also enables you to jump further anyway. Sorry Diddy, but shoddy performances like this is why you weren't allowed in Mario Kart for so long. So yeah, I pretty much choose Dixie every time. You also have a meter that lets you perform a team move that clears the screen of enemies. I just love that they called it a Kong Pow. Donkey Kong may not be the fastest of platform heroes, but he's certainly no slouch either. The roll move I mentioned just now, when you have a partner active, you can keep hammering the attack button to keep your roll constantly moving, which is very satisfying to do. But I don't always like to go fast in this game. People who know me know that I like my collectibles in games, and this game has some. You have the bananas, which give you an extra life every time you collect 100 of them. There are coins which can be used to buy things, but the main 2 would be the 4 Kong letters and also the jigsaw pieces. Big shock, Dave loves a platformer that has you collecting jigsaw pieces. These collectibles are why I don't like to go fast through the levels, as I just need to get everything. These 2 collectibles both net you a different reward and are also different in the nature you collect them in. The Kong letters, you need to get all 4 of them in one go. If you collect 3 of them and finish a level, you can't just go back and get the one you missed, you're going to have to collect the other 3 again. Collecting all the Kong letters in a single world will earn you a bonus level. The jigsaws, however, are one and done. Once you've collected one, you've got it. Even if you turn the game off mid-level after a checkpoint, I went back into that level after turning the game back on, and that jigsaw I'd already gotten was still gotten. These pieces can be found hidden in all sorts of nooks and crannies scattered around the level. They can reveal themselves after solving a light puzzle or collecting a row of bananas, or from the game's hidden bonus levels. These are a staple of the Donkey Kong Country franchise, although in these newer games it's just a simple matter of collecting all the bananas in a time limit, whereas the older games had a bigger variety of tasks. The bonus levels are not themed around the level they're in either, unlike the originals, which is a shame, especially as you will keep seeing the same bonus areas repeated several times. They're still fun to do, but it does feel a bit lacking. Collecting all the jigsaws in a level earns you some gallery collectibles such as art and figurines. But there's another reason I don't mind taking this game slowly, and I'm grateful for these collectibles making me take my time. Just look at these levels! The presentation of this game is phenomenal, with so much attention to detail and care put into each stage. It's just a joy to be in this world. And I also like the little features, such as when you stay in the barrel for a few seconds, the Kongs pop their heads out. The game's plot requires the Kongs to travel through multiple islands to reach DK's home, and despite the game's title, this game isn't just filled with snowy levels. There's a nice variety here, not just in theming, but in what the levels include. I mean, yeah, you have your jungles, grasslands, water and so on, but just look at what these levels contain. The second island starts with a windmill-themed level, and you gradually ascend a mountain as the world moves on, with moments in the level showing you gaining height. The first level in the game has a crashed plane that you burst out of, and throughout the other levels you're seeing plane wreckage about, and the boss of this world is a circus seal who's using a parachute as a circus tent. That's really clever, I thought. I think everyone knows about the fifth world, where the boss is a polar bear enjoying its ice lolly, but the levels in that world are showing the ice lollies being made. I never noticed that until I heard it from someone else. The level that stands out most to me is Grassland Groove. This just makes me think of The Lion King, and not the film The Lion King, but the stage show. Just look at the set pieces and the fake animals here, as well as the music. It is also an example of how the levels are crafted contextually. In something like Mario you can expect platforms and blocks to be magically floating, but here they like to create a reason for platforms to be elevated, such as the snakes you climb on and traverse. You can see the scaffolding and mechanisms that are holding them up and operating them. Throughout the game you'll find a lot of platforms are just part of the environment, such as tree branches and leaves, which makes the world feel more alive. Another trick they do to make the world feel more alive is with the camera. I mean, despite it being a 2D game, there are moments that make the world feel three-dimensional, such as this Noctopus attacking you from the background. The camera can shift position as you blast out of barrels or ride on a minecart, but also some levels start with the camera panning through the environment to the starting point, just showing you what's going on around this area. The stunning visuals are complemented by the amazing music, which I hope you've been enjoying throughout this video. So to talk about some other gameplay aspects, there are the minecart sections I mentioned already. They are typically auto-runner levels, but they are so much fun, with cleverly placed bananas and other collectibles enticing you to either jump or drop at the right times, and there's some epic moments as well to keep things interesting. There's some barrel riding levels that people apparently hate. I love them. Just holding A to raise the barrel up at the right time to avoid obstacles, it's a nice little variant to the levels. There's also underwater levels. Now, people who know me know that I hate underwater levels in games, and although I do find these control well, you simply move the analog stick to steer Donkey Kong along and you press Y to do a spin attack, which is a pretty fun way to move around quicker. It's similar to the Rayman games. There is also an air meter, which Donkey Kong didn't typically have before, but there are air bubbles to replenish them. Overall, the water levels, they aren't bad, but they are my least favourite part of the game. The bosses themselves are very well designed with some interesting enemies to fight. They follow the typical boss formula of working out their attack patterns, dodge them until there's an opening before you can jump on them or throw something at them, etc. I do think these are fun to do, but unfortunately I do find they go on too long. There are multiple phases for each fight, and if you die, you have to start all over again. This wouldn't normally annoy me, except each phase relies on you waiting around for an opening, so if you die at the end of the final phase, it does get a bit tedious to have to start again. Other than that, they are pretty spectacular. It also ends with DK doing a slow motion punch, and if you hit it at the right time, you get to hammer the living snot out of the boss before launching it away. Something you can also do at the ends of the levels with the DK barrels to get more collectibles, and this was one of the examples where it was fun to do it with the motion controls on the Wii. Doing this to the bosses gives you that typical kids cartoony way of showing that the boss isn't killed, only defeated. Except the third world where you're fighting 3 baboons. Each phase has to have you get rid of 1 baboon, and when you're on the third phase, the final baboon summons the ghosts of the first 2. DK just up and murdered them, it seems. It is nice to see this variety of enemies here. Returns had the Tikis, and Tropical Freeze has the Snowmads, but people do lament the lack of Kremlings. I mean, they are DK's iconic enemies after all. I personally don't mind, as these new enemies are great additions, and I feel if the Kremlings had returned, then people would just complain about the lack of original enemies. I'd be happy to see the Kremlings back, but I don't mind their absence if their replacements are this good. This game can be played in co-op, which I've always avoided as I've never been a fan of that sort of thing in platformers, but I tried it out for the purpose of this video and wow, I actually really enjoyed it. Player 2 chooses between Dixie, Diddy or Cranky and can freely change Kong between levels. They adopt their unique moves I already mentioned, and when moving independently, the camera will follow whoever is in the lead, and if one person is off screen for 3 seconds, they warp back to the other one, no lives lost or anything. When you do lose a life, you will just float back down to continue the level uninterrupted, unless you both die at the same time, then it's back to the checkpoint. When the second player is riding on DK's back, you can shoot projectiles. Cranky throws false teeth. This mode is also your one and only chance to play as Diddy, Dixie or Cranky separately, as in single player you have to play as Donkey Kong. If you just let player 1 die though when playing in co-op and don't revive him, then you can just play the game single player with the secondary character. The slower pace I tend to play this game in lends itself well to co-op, but it can also make later levels a lot harder. Falling off on a minecart level, for example, makes you lose 2 lives instead of just 1. Did I mention yet that this game is hard? Well, it is. I don't think it's as hard as many claim it to be, but then I am amazingly skilled at platformers, to be completely modest. But although I find myself dying a lot, the game is very generous with extra lives. I typically max out the life count at 99 by the time I'm on the 3rd world. One way you can gain lives is with coins, which can be spent at the shop. The shop is hosted by Funky Kong, everyone's favourite Mario Kart racer for some reason. The shop lets you buy lives, extra hit points or air and all sorts of goodies to help you on your adventure. But the most useful is Parrot Face here, who lets you track down where the jigsaw pieces are. It doesn't tell you the precise location, it just tells you when you're close, which is very useful at finding those last few. Speaking of Funky Kong, he's playable in the Switch version of the game in the new Funky mode. He's essentially an easy mode where you can do all the abilities that the Kong sidekicks have all at once, and he has 5 hit points. You know, I would love the option to play as Funky with just 2 hit points. Have the easier playstyle with some stakes added to it, but you know, that's just me. There's also a time trial mode you can activate once you've beaten a level, where you can go for like a gold medal on them. I don't play this one personally, as I said I like to play this game at a slower pace, but I love that it's here. I always love things like time trials in games, even if I don't play them myself. Overall, this game is just phenomenal, if you couldn't tell. It's visually stunning, the music is fantastic, the level design is pitch perfect with interesting themes and mechanics that make the game extremely memorable. The fact it was a port of a Wii U game without much value added made it a hard sell for those who owns the Wii U version, but that wasn't that many people it seems. If you haven't tried this game yet, then you owe it to yourself. It's one of the very best 2D platformers ever made. But that's just me. What do you think of this game? Let me know in that comment section down below. Make sure you're liked and subscribed, and let me know of any platformers I should try and maybe make a video like this on. Thank you so much for watching everyone, see you in the next one.